I want to read off my list of the top films of 2020. It's kind of late in the year of 2021, but it's given me time to watch a few movies I might not have seen otherwise. I got to see everything I think I would put on a best of the year list, so I'm going to start with my top 10 of 2020. Then in part 2, I'll go through everything else I saw in 2020, starting with number 11. So let's begin. Number 10 on my best of the year list is actually a documentary titled The Painter and the Thief. This is a really great Norwegian documentary. The art thief himself, but he's a very interesting subject of this documentary, and there's a lot that I'm not going to spoil because it isn't really worth telling you. It's just a great film. Even though it's a documentary, it's a very entertaining documentary. It's very good, and you should totally check it out. It's one of the best films of 2020. I would give that one an 8 out of 10. Next on my list is the movie Possessor, directed by Brandon Cronenberg. If you like blood and being disturbed, this movie is right up your alley. At times it reminded me of something like Under the Skin, but Possessor still has its own unique voice, and I'm looking forward to what this director does next. I'm giving Possessor an 8. Now let's move on to something that's more of a comedy, Borat's subsequent movie film. The original Borat is probably one of my favorite comedies, or one of my favorite mockumentaries. For me anyway, it's up there with This Is Spinal Tap or something like that. It doesn't reach the heights of the original Borat. It is one of the greatest mockumentaries of all time, but Sacha Baron Cohen is excellent as the character of Borat. It was a very controversial film when it came out. While I do really like this film, I don't think it's a perfect film. However, it is a good companion piece to the original Borat. I would give that a 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10. Next on my list is Minari. The story follows a Korean family in Arkansas. It has a really great cast, of course Steven Yeun from The Walking Dead, and I thought the actress who played Soonja, the grandmother, was excellent. If you like other A24 movies, well then, go and see Minari. This is the first of many A24 movies you're going to see on this list. I rate Minari an 8 out of 10. Number 6 is The Father, starring Anthony Hopkins. This movie is based on a play, and it did feel like a play while watching it. Anthony Hopkins, he's a great actor, and he can take on some challenging roles. This film is definitely worth seeing just for him. I rate The Father a 9. Number 5 on my list is First Cow, another film by A24. This film went under my radar when it came out, and I'm glad I got a chance to see it. It looks great, it really takes its time with these characters, and the actors are really great in this movie as well. And after watching this movie, I'm in the mood for some blueberry clafoutis.
Blueberry clafoutis.
I rate First Cow a 9. Another great film I saw was the film Tenet, directed by Christopher Nolan. I thought this movie was fucking awesome. It completely blew my mind upon watching it the first time, and upon multiple viewings, I've grown appreciation for the way the film was made, and just the story itself. The cinematography for this film is excellent. That's because Christopher Nolan has a great DP, IMAX cameras that shoot 70mm film, and capture some of the highest quality film you can see right now. This really adds a lot to the depth of the image, and it makes the film even more intense than it already is because it makes it feel real. The car chase in the middle of this film is great. It's a really well shot scene. This film has a really distinct look. The use of special effects, which blends some CGI, but for the most part camera tricks such as reversing footage. If you don't like this idea of the Tenet device or the algorithm and you think this movie is convoluted, well that's fine. The characters themselves are really vague and bizarre. So like many other parts of the movie, the characters are left ambiguous, which for some people can be really frustrating in a film that is over 2 hours long. They leave a lot of elements to this story vague, which is ultimately a good thing because it could fall apart very easily, and the story does involve time travel or time manipulation in some way, but what the story does with it is ultimately really cool. But man, it is just a ride from start to end, especially when this film gets into the second act and you get to that really awesome car chase in the middle. The stakes for this film feel very grand, and that's because it falls back on a lot of the conventional things you'd see in a Hollywood blockbuster. I do think this film has a sense of self-awareness. One part that's been memed online is the "I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago" thing. While it does have a sense of humor, for the most part this is a very bleak film as well. This film has deeper themes having to do with time, which is present in many of Christopher Nolan's movies. For a Hollywood blockbuster, it takes its audience very seriously, and as a result, I got a movie I think is really great, unique, intense, has a great score, has a really great cast, and it's just another really good movie in the catalog of the director Christopher Nolan, who does nothing but good stuff, and I'm excited to see his next movie. Nolan's next film will be with Universal. Good luck with that, I guess. It is an incredibly awesome action movie with really great acting, incredible effects and stunts. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. Tenet is a awesome movie. It is a great sensory experience with a really cool, unique story, some absolutely stunning cinematography, also some of the best action scenes of that year. I rate Tenet a 9 out of 10. Next is Sound of Metal, which I also thought was really great. One of the most important aspects of the movie, especially with that title, is the use of audio, which I actually thought was really unique in this movie. A lot of what they do with the audio here is really inventive. Sound of Metal was definitely one of the best movies the year it came out. It's one of those movies that has made a lot of best of the year lists, so I'll just leave it for you to enjoy. I give Sound of Metal a 9. Number 2 is Another Round, directed by Thomas Vinterberg. I thought this film was excellent. This film was emotional, it was funny, it was well acted. Mads Mikkelsen is great. This film has a shift in tone, but it's done really effectively. I just got to see this movie and I'm glad I did because it made the list. I would give Another Round a 9 out of 10. My favorite film from that year is Mank, directed by David Fincher. I really like the black and white look of this movie. It's around the 80th anniversary of the release of Citizen Kane, which is crazy. The story follows one of the writers of Citizen Kane, Herman Mankiewicz. It feels like a David Fincher film in the way it's shot, in the way it's edited. It did feel like something different for him as well. It wasn't about serial killers, or it wasn't a crime film or a thriller. It's more of a drama. I guess you could call it a period piece or a biopic as well. It's again composed by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who for once actually didn't use any electronic in this score, or at least not anything I noticed while listening to it. It just goes for the tone of that 1940s setting. Something else unique about this movie is that it's actually written by David Fincher's dad, and I think it's a very well written film. Tom Burke, who plays Orson Welles in this film. It's easy to believe you're actually watching Orson Welles on screen. That's how good of a performance he gives. I think this movie kind of went over a lot of people's heads when it came out because of what it's about. If you like David Fincher's films, you're gonna like this film. It's just as simple as that. And he just keeps getting better and better with every film he makes. So definitely check this one out if you're a fan of him. I rate Mank a 10. So that's my best of the year list. I saw about 50 movies from that year. That isn't counting the series and the docu-series that I viewed. And that isn't counting short films either. Next up on my list is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This movie is written by Charlie Kaufman, and like many of his other movies, you have to think about this one. What I like about it is that it's very unique. It doesn't follow any kind of conventional anything. I would give that an 8 out of 10. My next film on my list is Soul. It's elevated a lot by that unique story of following a jazz musician in just a city. The score of this film, which is by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, it's just another thing that separates it from the rest of these Pixar movies that come out. I thought the animation was really great. I give Soul a 7 out of 10. Next up on my list is The Devil All the Time. It's a well-made period piece. It is shot on film, which helps add to the atmosphere and the authenticity of the setting. There are strong performances in this movie. I give it a 7 out of 10. Number 14 is Zola. I got to see this movie at Sundance Film Festival. That was pretty cool. It ends far too abruptly. Aside from that, this is a pretty entertaining film. Just watch it for yourself and enjoy. I also give Zola a 7 out of 10. Number 15 is The Gentleman. The Gentleman, directed by Guy Ritchie, was a pleasant surprise when it came out early in 2020. Once it gets going, it's a good movie. It has a really awesome cast as well. I rate it 7 out of 10. Number 16 is Pieces of a Woman. The characters are pretty well written in this film. They were three-dimensional and complex. I really liked Ellen Burstyn's character in this film. Netflix made a couple great movies this year. This is one of them. I didn't quite like it as much as Marriage Story. 7 out of 10. Number 17 is Wolfwalkers. This is a 2D animated movie that's a third part of a trilogy. I haven't seen the other two. I just saw this one. If there's anything to enjoy about this movie, it would be the animation. The story is kind of standard for my tastes. It's definitely definitely the best thing you can watch on Apple Plus. It's better than Greyhound. I rate Wolfwalkers 6 out of 10. Number 18 is Quo Vadis, Aida. The story follows a translator and her family during a refugee crisis. It's well shot, it's well acted. I don't have much else to say about it aside from that. It's a really well made film. I rate it 6 out of 10. Number 19 is Palm Springs. It's a very short film, it's very light. I rate Palm Springs 6 out of 10. Number 20 is The Trial of the Chicago 7, which is by Aaron Sorkin. The Trial of the Chicago 7, while I did think it was a good film, was in desperate need of another director. Aaron Sorkin is just not a good director. As a writer, especially when writing television, he's really talented, and especially when he's working with a more capable director like David Fincher or Danny Boyle. But if I had any issue with The Trial of the Chicago 7, I didn't like the way the film was shot. I didn't believe many of the actors in their parts. I thought the pacing was all over the place, and it really doesn't compare to a lot of other Aaron Sorkin's work. If there's anyone I liked in the movie, it would be Mark Rylance. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, which is still a good score. Number 21 is Da 5 Bloods. Not one of Spike Lee's best, not one of his worst either, kind of in the middle. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Number 22 is Nomadland. There's nothing that really grabbed me about this film. 6 out of 10. Number 23 is Onward. It wasn't particularly a very comedic film, like it wasn't very funny. 6 out of 10. 24 is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. It's really uncomfortable. I would give it a 6. I could see how you would like it more. Next is Promising Young Woman. I would give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I really don't feel strongly about it. Number 26 is Spree. I don't think this is a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but I did find it pretty entertaining. It has a goofy premise about an Uber driver who goes around killing people and live streams it on the internet. I give it a 5 out of 10. Number 27 is News of the World. This is directed by Paul Greengrass, and it didn't really feel like one of his movies like the Bourne films. I really didn't see this film that long ago, and there's nothing about it that really stuck with me. I give it 5 out of 10. Number 28 is Undine. There's some logical things in it that I thought were kind of strange. I give it 5 out of 10. Number 29 is One Night in Miami. I give it 5 out of 10. Number 30 is The Invisible Man. I reviewed this one already. I did not think it was that great. I would probably rate it 5 out of 10. Number 31 is The Night House. There are parts of this film I really like, and I thought there were some kind of unique scares in this movie. I thought Rebecca Hall was really good in the film. There are plenty of cliche horror things in this movie that were just not good. Toward the end of this movie, it gets really convoluted, and the neighbor character was completely ridiculous. I would probably give it a 5 out of 10. Number 32 is The Hillbilly Elegy. A lot of good people involved in this movie. I like Amy Adams and I like Ron Howard, but the movie just didn't really come together that well. It's just not very compelling, and it's actually kind of really corny and over the top. So 5 out of 10. Number 33 is The King of Staten Island. Unlike a movie like Palm Springs, which I thought was really fun and light and short, The King of Staten Island is a really bloated and uneven movie. Bill Burr, who I really like as a comedian, but in this movie, he's just kind of playing himself. There's no reason for this movie to be over 2 hours long. It's not like this deep drama. I don't know if it was trying to be. If it was, then I think it completely fails at doing that. It's just nothing. I felt like not a lot actually happened. I would give The King of Staten Island a 4 out of 10. Number 34 is Becky. It's trying to be a comedy, but not all of the time. It really just needed to go all out goofy. It did feel tame. I would give Becky a 4 out of 10. Number 35 is the Spongebob movie, Sponge on the Run. This is the third Spongebob movie and the weakest one. The original creator has no involvement in this movie, and it kind of shows. I don't get why it needed to be 3D animated. It should have been 2D like the show. And the show is still funnier than this movie is. 4 out of 10 for this one. Number 36 is Sonic the Hedgehog. If you like the Sonic video game and you have the brain of a 4-year-old, then you might like this movie. It's a gross video game adaptation with no originality. It's completely mediocre. I give Sonic a 4 out of 10. Number 37 is The Way Back, starring Ben Affleck. This was even worse than Live by Night, if you can believe it. Give it a 4 out of 10. Number 38 is Unhinged, starring Russell Crowe. It's about what you'd expect from the poster, and it's just really dumb, formulaic, and I would give it a 4 out of 10. Number 39 is Project Power. Project Power is just another mediocre Netflix action movie. You're going to see a ton of them on this list. I give it a 4 out of 10. Number 40 is Greenland. Jesus Christ, 4 out of 10. Next up is The Hunt. I hate the marketing behind this movie. I just thought it was really not that entertaining. entertaining. 4 out of 10 for that one. Number 42 is Extraction, another mediocre Netflix action movie. 3 out of 10 for that. Number 43 is yet another mediocre Netflix action movie, The Old Guard. 3 out of 10. Number 44 is Greyhound. It was trying to be like Dunkirk. Dunkirk is a much better movie because they used real battleships and it was just far more intense. Much better film than Greyhound. Another better film is Captain Phillips, also starring Tom Hanks. Again, felt more real than this kind of over-the-top CGI kind of midway shit. You can't even believe anything that's happening in the movie. Go watch Dunkirk or something. 3 out of 10 for Greyhound. Number 45 is Dolittle. Yeah, Dolittle. 3 out of 10. Number 46 is Triggered. About as good as you'd expect from a movie called Triggered. 3 out of 10. Number 47 is Capone. Tom Hardy in this role. He doesn't actually bring anything to this character, and they could have actually gotten someone older, and it probably would have been a better movie. Even if it was a completely unknown actor, the age gap between Al Capone at the time and Tom Hardy might not be that huge, but it was just a really distracting choice. There's some other good actors in this movie too, but they're not in the movie a lot, and they're barely given anything to do.
Hey! 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 Hey!
The movie's completely bland looking. The gore and the violence was over the top, and it was just thrown in. It didn't really add anything to the story. With the title, it reminded me of Gotti. This movie's kind of a waste of time.
Hey, keep going, keep going.
All right.
I give Capone a 2 out of 10. Number 48 is Birds of Prey. The character of Harley Quinn doesn't make sense. There's just like a million things in this movie that I'm just like, what is going on? The movie underwent like 3 different titles, I think. There are way too many characters in it. They just accidentally put the cable version of Birds of Prey on HBO Max instead of the normal version that's rated R. Not that it matters. I don't think the violence or the blood adds anything to this movie. I don't know what this film was going for. It isn't funny. The action isn't engaging. There's no good performances. I actually thought Margot Robbie was bad in this movie. Ian McGregor is Black Mask. He's barely in it. This clearly has an audience, but I don't know who, and it isn't me. This is just crap. Number 49, The New Mutants. The characters in this movie suck. The story sucks. The dialogue in this movie is terrible.
The bear, it's too big.
You're bigger.
The acting, holy shit, it is so bad. There is not a single good performance in this entire movie. I don't have anything good to say about it. It's in focus. 2 out of 10. Number 50 on my list is The Rhythm Section. Holy shit, is this movie bland as fuck. This is the most forgettable fucking action movie ever made. It's one of the most dull movies to ever exist. If you're having trouble falling asleep, put this on. 2 out of 10 for The Rhythm Section. Another piece of shit is Wonder Woman 1984. I can see now that this is a much worse movie than the original Wonder Woman. The story, the characters, the acting is just far worse in this movie. The Wishing Stone story is so contrived, I'm not sure why they chose to do that in just the second sequel to Wonder Woman. I give Wonder Woman 1984 a 2 out of 10. Number 52 is another bad Nick Cage movie, 2 out of 10. Next up is Ava. This one is atrocious. Stay away from Ava, 2 out of 10. Number 54, Artemis Fowl. The effects are terrible. It feels like a movie that's been through development hell for 20 years. The movie's release date even got pushed back a year. Disney's sudden involvement in the movie really butchered it. The original author of the book described the story as Die Hard with fairies, and that's not really what this movie captures. It's just a fucking piece of garbage. 2 out of 10 for Artemis Fowl. Another stinker from Disney was Mulan. The movie's actually completely devoid of anything interesting at all. It's live action, so you're missing out on that 2D animation, which is really quite nice looking. 2 out of 10 for Mulan. Number 56 is Rogue. No. 1 out of 10. Number 57 is Alpha Code, directed by Keone Waxman, who you know for directing those Steven Seagal movies. If there was a number to describe this movie, Alpha Code, it would be a 1. Next is Turnt.
You know I don't play no games in the streets, man.
What a mistake I made with that.
This isn't really a real movie. I don't know if you would call it one. If you were to watch like 5 minutes of it, you would agree with me. If you are gonna count it as a real movie, it's just about one of the worst things I think I've ever seen.
And all has something to do with your youngest son's revenge.
I give it a 1. All of the movies starring Bruce Willis from that year: Hard Kill, Survive the Night, and Breach.
Blue's a big boy. Give him some room.
And I already reviewed those anyway. The only one I didn't review was Breach.
Stop. They're coming. They're all around you. Move.
All of his dialogue is awful, and his character's supposed to be an alcoholic, so they constantly cut to him drinking. And again, he's in the movie for 5 minutes.
That crazy motherfucker.
Bruce Willis takes the bottom spot of 2020. That's my list. I hope you enjoyed my video. 2020 was a bit of a crazy year. There have been plenty of good movies this year. Some of them might even make my list for the best of the year. That's all for now. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you later.